Hi, it's Jo from Minerva. Today I'm going to do a tutorial on how to put elastic in a casing, but I'll take it a little bit further. I'll show you how to do it in elastic. I'm going to show you two methods. I'm going to show you how to put elastic through a casing and a couple of different variations you can try. I've also had a project on the go where I had a curved casing, and that needs a facing, so I'll show you that way as well. So today's video is a little mashup of all bits of different projects. So you'll see me wearing different clothes and with different jewellery on. The most common problem people have when they're putting elastic through a casing is you get round to a seam and you get your pin or your bobbin stuck in all of the seam allowance. So I'll show you a little trick to overcome that too. I've just sewn together two rectangles, right sides together, as if I was making a little, in fact I'm going to make a little skirt. I'm going to make a little toddler summer skirt. So I'm going to put the casing for elastic through the top. So I've got two seams either side pressed open, and the first thing I'm going to do is to press down 1/2 centimetre, and then I'm going to press down again the width of my elastic. I'm using a really narrow elastic today because I want to show you a 2-channel method, which gives a really neat finish for an elastic waist. If you just use one, it can roll a little bit. So if you use 2 layers of elastic, you get a much better finish. You can also do a finish where you get a little frill around the top. So first of all, I'm going to press down from the top. The raw edge will go in 1/2 centimetre, and then I'm going to press down again 3 centimetres. So when we're threading elastic and it's getting stuck, our pin is actually getting stuck under there. And you keep pushing and pushing, and blindly behind that fabric you're trying to get the safety pin to travel across here, but you'll get stuck under here. So a way to avoid that before you start sewing is to trim out some of that seam allowance so that your safety pin doesn't get stuck. So you're making this sort of shape. So you've got less bulk there, but you've also got less chance of your pin getting stuck because it's just such a small amount of fabric, it will just scoot over the top. So that is how you avoid getting your safety pin stuck. So now we can pin around here. Don't need loads, just enough to hold it in. And these pins are the wrong way around. And you can do the same at the start, but it's not quite so crucial at the start because you can manipulate it a little bit more. But if you know the technique, you might as well use it. Just stops a bit of heartache. So if you grade out the seam, you can start to pin. Another thing you can do to make life a little bit easier is to move your casing opening just off the seam allowance. Keep that nice and as your straight seam, and all of that is then down nice and securely. And then on the sort of just on the side back, just leave your opening there instead, because then you can get in and out easily without having to get stuck in there. And also when you come to close it up, you've got a nice flat area to try and close up. When that's all wrinkled up with elastic and you've got all the seam allowances, it's quite hard to make that a smooth join at the end. So there's 2 tips on how to make your casing a little bit easier when you thread the elastic. To thread elastic in a casing, you can use one of 2 things. You can use a safety pin that fits inside that casing, so try not to make it too big so it's putting stress on your seams, or you can use a little bodkin, and this is a vintage one out of my grandma's sewing box, but you can still get these, and it's like a safety pin, but it's really narrow, so it can go through really slim casings. You could put a really slim piece of elastic in with that. I'm going to use the thicker one because I want to show you how well I can get the safety pin past those seam allowances now that we've trimmed them out. So you put the safety pin onto the elastic and you take the safety pin through and you gather the fabric onto it. So you hold the end of the safety pin and push some fabric onto the safety pin, hold the head, release, hold the back end of the safety pin, push the elastic on, hold the front end and release. And you keep doing that until you've got it sort of on its way. Even though it's stretchy, it's a good idea not to bunch it all up. And now I've come to the join and it just goes straight past. It's not getting caught on that seam allowance at all. But I'm getting a tiny bit left on the end, so I just want to pin that down so that it doesn't scoot through. I can keep pushing the elastic through, and this works for cuffs, waistbands, ankles on pyjamas or summer trousers. Until you get all the way back round to the beginning, and again we can get past that area because it's nice and small, and then our safety pin can pop out. To join the two together before the one pings through and distribute the elastic. It's a good idea now for the person to try it on. And then you can join the ends of the elastic together. Now, if you've got really thin elastic like this, you can just sew across the end here with a zigzag stitch or a straight stitch. If you've got really wide elastic, then it's better to do a square shape so that the pieces are flat. If your elastic's wider, you're better to have them overlapped so it keeps nice and flat and continuous. Otherwise, if you sew like that, it makes quite a big bulk. So you would be expecting to sew a square and a cross through the middle. So you'd be looking for that sort of shape to hold that nice and flat. When you've joined your elastic together, then that can scoot inside. And as you can see, it's much easier for me to sew across that flat end than if I was trying to get across here. I'm going to repeat that for my second piece of elastic so I get a really professional looking casing. Time to sew at the end. You will need to pin that down because you've got a bit of tension there from the elastic, and join up your seam lines. And there's a casing, and that's a double one, so you get a really nice comfortable waistband. You can use the bodkin or the safety pin, but they both work just as well. But you can really switch up your waistband finishes when you know how to do some different casings. This is how you make a curved casing. This is really useful for making sure that you don't get lots of puckers on your seam line and that you get a curved shape, and you can get a really nice bishop sleeve. Sometimes when you're making a casing, you can't just turn up the hem of the part of the pattern piece twice and make a casing inside, because the pattern piece is curved. So when you tried to make a casing, you'd get lots of twists and puckers in it. So sometimes on a casing, sometimes you find it on the top of a very shaped waistband of some trousers, or in this case on a bishop sleeve, you will have a facing that runs along the shape of where you're putting the casing, and you'll sew it, flip it round, and then sew it again, and that will make the casing, and I'll show you how to do that now. So you attach the casing to the item. I've left a little bit for handling each end, and I'll show you why. You can do it in a loop if you want, but I kind of quite like working flat. And then when I fold the sleeve in half, I will sew down the side, and then I can match up the casings at the end. So I've got just enough sort of room for handling there, and then I can see how much to sew on there after. So first I'm going to sew the side seam and not the casing. And then I can carry on pinning and measuring my casing. Look, my casing is better suited there, so I'm going to sew that along there. So it's a sort of measure as you go, really. Until I've got the sleeve in a complete circle and the casing in a complete circle all attached. So essentially, whether you've done it in a circle or whether you did it flat, you've got a casing attached to the lower edge of your hem, and then you can turn up the hem and pin, and then you'll get this curved shape along the bottom. But you can put your elastic casing in without having to try and create a curved shape and create all puckers along here. So there's a way to alternative way to add a casing. You can also do it like that if, say, you're running out of fabric to get the full length of something. You can cut a piece from another strip, so it might be useful for that if you're jiggling a little bit of fabric requirements. And it also just looks a little bit better, I think, than a fold over casing. Just looks like more like a waistband than if you just folded it over. So that's this second technique for making a casing using a curved facing. And when it's pressed, you'll get a really nice bishop sleeve shape that's curved. So when you put your elastic in it, you'll get a really nice casing that isn't all puckered or anything from the right side. Don't forget to leave a space open for you to thread your elastic through. Next, I'd like to show you how to put some ribbon in a casing, because it's not always elastic that you're doing. It might be a tie on something. And I've always wondered for ages and ages and ages how to get where you pull a drawstring back and the two sides pull it together. And it took me ages to work it out. So I'm going to show you so that it's easy for you to find out. I've made a bag shape and I want to put a ribbon through the top. But I want it to pull from both sides. So this casing is split into two. So the edges are turned under and finished, and they're separate, so that now I can turn these down, make a fold, turn them down and encase everything. I'm going to pin that, sew it down. That way all the raw edges are enclosed, and I'll have little open places at the end for my ribbon to come out, but that end has been finished. So really it's two little rectangles on the end of my bag, and there isn't a seam at the side, so that the ribbons can come out either side. So I've got a split casing with holes at the end, and when I put the ribbon in, I'm not going to put it in one piece, I'm going to put it in two pieces. So I've cut my ribbon in half, and I'm going to push one through this way, and then through the next one this way. So I've got two ends going that way, and then I'm going to do the opposite. So this time I'm going to go from the non-tail end through and the other way. So I've got one piece going that way and one piece going that way, so that when I pull on them, they pull on each other. And that's how you can get a ribbon tie that pulls your top in, and then you can tie the ends or put bead on. Lots of different finishes you can have there. And I'm going to cut the ends at an angle. And you can just melt the ends a little bit to stop them fraying, as long as it's not cotton, as long as it's a synthetic. So now when I open it, they'll stay to the end, and when I pull it, they pull on each other. So that's how you make a ribbon casing on the top of a bag. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed that. I know sometimes it's easy just to whip the elastic through, but some of those little tips will really stop you getting frustrated when you're trying to put an elastic waistband in, or if you're trying to do a drawstring bag and you want to make it for a gift and you want to make it look a little bit more professional. Do head over to minerva.com to check out some more of our inspirational projects, products and makers. Please call again soon. Thanks very much. Bye.